There comes a time in life when the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop giving benefit of the doubt to people who've proven they don't deserve it. Outsmarting evil people and manipulators isn't about outwitting them in a battle. It's about learning to protect your peace without losing your humanity. It's about rising above, not sinking beneath. It's about keeping your power without having to take theirs. You can't protect yourself from what you pretend not to see. And too often, especially for those of us raised to be polite, forgiving, and accommodating, we confuse kindness with blindness. But here's the truth. Awareness isn't negativity, it's maturity. It's the first and most important step in outsmarting anyone who seeks to manipulate, control, or harm you. Evil people and manipulators are rarely obvious. They don't walk in announcing their intentions. They arrive with charm, smiles, compliments. They position themselves as victims, saviors, or allies. They study your weaknesses, not to understand you, but to use you. They thrive on your confusion. They get power not by overpowering you, but by making you second-guess yourself. So awareness becomes your internal compass. It starts as a whisper in your gut. That didn't feel right. It's the tension in your shoulders after a conversation you can't quite explain. It's that recurring thought you dismiss, telling yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe it's just me. But awareness means you stop silencing your instincts. You stop asking for permission to trust your own discomfort. You begin to name patterns instead of excusing them. You pay attention to repeated behavior, not isolated apologies. Evil and manipulation flourish in the dark corners of your self-doubt. Awareness turns on the light. It's not dramatic, it's not loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet internal shift that says, this person is not safe. This situation is draining me. This pattern keeps repeating, and I need to stop romanticizing red flags. And yes, becoming aware may change how you see people you once loved. It might hurt. It might mean grieving an illusion. But would you rather grieve the illusion or keep living inside it? Awareness doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you free. When you learn to see manipulation clearly, you start to reclaim parts of yourself you didn't even realize you handed over. Your time, your energy, your ability to say no without guilt. You become someone who sees through the smoke rather than someone always trying to put out fires. Awareness is your first shield, because once you see the game, you can choose not to play. One of the most misunderstood and manipulated ideas in relationships, especially by those who seek to control or guilt you, is the concept of boundaries. The moment you begin to assert them, you may hear words like selfish, cold, or ungrateful. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not aggression. Boundaries are clarity. They are not walls to shut people out. They are doors you choose to open with wisdom, not obligation. And they are not meant to hurt others. They're meant to protect you from being hurt over and over again. Manipulators thrive in confusion. If they can blur the lines, they can keep control. If they can keep you guessing about your role, your worth, your responsibilities, they win. That's why they dislike boundaries, because boundaries remove the fog. They turn the light on. They define what is okay and what is not okay. No more guessing, no more loopholes. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They're not threats. They're not emotional power moves. They are self-respect in action. When you say, I won't be spoken to that way, I need time before I respond. I'm not available to fix that for you. This conversation is over for me now. You're not being cruel. You're being clear. And clarity scares people who benefit from your confusion. And yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years being the peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who absorbs everyone else's mess just to keep the room calm. But silence is not peace. Suffering in silence is not noble. And constantly shrinking yourself to make others comfortable is not love. It's self-erasure. The most respectful relationships in your life will adjust to your boundaries with understanding. But the ones built on control, guilt, or dependency will rage, guilt trip, or even ghost you. Let them. That's not rejection. That's revelation. Boundaries are how you teach people who you are. And more importantly, boundaries are how you remind yourself who you are, especially when you've been made to forget. You don't need to over-explain them. You don't need to soften them with nervous laughter or apologies. A clear no can be loving. A firm "this doesn't work for me" is not an act of war. It's an act of inner alignment. Because when your boundaries are clear, you stop bleeding energy into people and situations that were never your responsibility to fix. So the next time someone calls your boundary aggressive, ask yourself, is it aggression or is it just the first time I've stopped letting them overstep me? Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're courage. They're not punishment. They're protection. And they aren't about control, they're about ownership of your own peace. When you've been manipulated, lied to, gaslit, or deeply hurt, the most natural reaction is to want justice, to expose the liar, to match their energy, to hit back where it hurts. But here's the trap. The moment you fight dirty with the dirty, you've already stepped into their arena and they wrote the rules. Manipulators don't play fair. That's their whole strategy. And once you stoop to their level, once you retaliate out of spite, bitterness, or ego, you may win a battle, but you've already started to lose yourself. This doesn't mean you become passive or weak. It doesn't mean you allow the abuse to continue. It means you learn to respond from strength, not react from pain. You don't need to play their games to win your life back. Fighting. Dirty might look like exposing their secrets, trying to beat them at manipulation, using silence as punishment, or turning mutual friends against them. But the truth is, every time you seek revenge, you're still tethered to them. You're still letting them pull your strings. You cannot out-manipulate a manipulator. Because the moment you try, they've already succeeded. You're in the mud with them, getting dirty and exhausted while they stay in control of the chaos they created. So what does real power look like? It looks like restraint. It looks like walking away without needing the last word. It looks like protecting your energy instead of spending it trying to make them see your worth. It looks like choosing peace over drama, even when your pride is screaming for a fight. Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is not fighting at all, but thriving in silence. This doesn't mean you suppress your anger. Feel it, honor it, let it teach you, but don't let it shape you. Your healing is not a weapon. Your dignity is not for sale. Fighting dirty may feel good in the short term, but it will cost you clarity, peace, and often your own moral compass. And at the end of the day, you don't want to become like the people who tried to break you. You want to rise above, not sink beneath. Let them throw mud. Let them twist the truth. Let them perform for an audience. You don't need revenge when you have inner resolve. You don't need to win the argument when you've already reclaimed your life. Your greatest power lies not in matching their tactics, but in refusing to be moved by them at all. Stay rooted in your integrity. That's how you win. That's how you outsmart evil without becoming it. One of the hardest lessons, especially for empathetic people, is learning that feeling everything is not the same as healing everything. When dealing with manipulative or toxic individuals, emotional detachment can feel foreign, even wrong. But make no mistake, detachment is not cruelty, it's wisdom. Manipulators feed off reaction. They thrive on triggering you. Your guilt, your anger, your need to explain, to be liked, to be understood. The moment they get an emotional charge from you, they win. Not because they're right, but because they've drawn you back into the cycle. The truth is, many of us were conditioned to over-explain, to over-care, to stay connected at all costs, even when it's killing us quietly. Detachment isn't about becoming cold or heartless. It's about learning to put your emotions back in your own hands where they belong. It's about saying, I can see what you're doing, but I won't respond with chaos. I can hear your words, but I no longer absorb them as truth. I don't need to convince you of who I am. I just need to protect who I've become. There is a difference between disconnecting from someone's manipulation and disconnecting from your own humanity. Emotional detachment isn't shutting down. It's shutting off the access they once had to control you. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop bleeding every time they speak. You begin to observe, not absorb. You begin to see the patterns without being pulled into the emotional quicksand of every word, every look, every silent treatment. And yes, it can feel harsh, especially if you've always been the understanding one, the one who texts back, who explains, who forgives before they even apologize. But ask yourself, how much of my emotional availability has been used against me? When you emotionally detach, you no longer negotiate with dysfunction. You don't argue to prove your worth. You don't plead with someone who's weaponizing your empathy. You step out of the emotional tug-of-war entirely. That's not cold. That's clarity. Because the moment you stop reacting, the manipulator loses their grip. They can't guilt you if you're no longer hooked. They can't provoke you if you've chosen peace. They can't rewrite your reality if you stop playing the role they wrote for you. And here's the deepest truth. You don't have to harden to protect yourself. You just have to stop leaking your energy into people who don't honor it. Emotional detachment is not a shutdown of the heart. It's an upgrade of self-respect. I still have love in me, but I will no longer spend it on those who feed on my pain. I still feel deeply, but I now choose where those feelings go. I still care, just not at the expense of my sanity. Let them think you're cold. Let them say you've changed. Because emotional detachment isn't about them. It's about coming home to yourself without needing their permission to feel whole again. When you've been manipulated, gaslit, or wronged, your first instinct might be to win, to out-talk them, to outmaneuver them, to prove to everyone, maybe even to yourself, that you were right and they were wrong, that you're not crazy, not mean, not the villain they painted you to be. But here's the truth you learned with time and heartbreak. You don't win with a manipulator, you exit with your peace, your dignity, and your energy intact. Because manipulators aren't interested in resolution, they're interested in control. They don't want healing, they want your attention, your reaction, your participation in their game. And the more you try to prove your side, the deeper you're pulled into a conversation that was never designed to be fair. It's like trying to explain colors to someone who insists they're blind. You send paragraphs, they send blame. You open your heart, they rewrite history. Ask for honesty, they give you gaslight. And every time you engage, hoping to finally win, to finally be heard, understood, validated, you end up more drained, more confused, more defeated than before. That's not a coincidence. That's the system working exactly as they intended. So what's the alternative? You stop playing. You stop trying to win an argument with someone who needs to misunderstand you in order to keep their version of the story alive. You stop trying to change the narrative and start changing your direction. You shift your goal from winning them over to walking away whole. This is not weakness. This is strength. The kind of strength that says, I no longer need closure from chaos. I don't need to be right in your story to feel right in my own skin. I'd rather be free than be seen as good in the eyes of someone committed to misunderstanding me. And yes, this choice can feel like loss because for a long time, your nervous system was wired to fight, to fix, to prove. And walking away feels like surrender, like giving up. But it's not giving up, it's waking up. It's realizing that the biggest win isn't proving your point, it's protecting your peace. Because here's what they don't want you to know. Leaving quietly is louder than any argument. Peacefully walking away is more disruptive than any emotional reaction. And healing in silence is the ultimate rebellion. Don't waste another year trying to win a battle that only exists to exhaust you. The only victory that matters is this. You got out with your soul intact. You chose peace over war. You chose yourself. That's not defeat. That's deliverance. One of the most dangerous effects of manipulation is self-doubt. Over time, it chips away at your ability to trust your own experience. You start to second-guess what you saw, what you felt, what you heard. The facts get blurry. The truth becomes negotiable, and suddenly, you're no longer grounded in your reality. You're trapped in theirs. That's not a coincidence. That's by design. Manipulators are not just liars, they're illusionists. They will say whatever they need to say to confuse you, calm you, control you. They will spin stories, deny the undeniable, blame you for their behavior, and play the victim when you hold them accountable. And if you're not rooted in self-trust, you'll start believing them. You'll start believing, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it is my fault. But here's the unshakable truth. You don't need their agreement to validate your experience. You only need your own clarity. You were there. You felt what you felt. You noticed the pattern that kept repeating. No matter how many promises were made, that is real, that is valid, that is enough. When someone is consistently telling you that your truth isn't true, your job is not to argue louder. Your job is to anchor deeper in what you saw and what you felt in your body and what you remember clearly when you're not under their influence. Because truth doesn't come with gaslight, it comes with peace. Manipulators will always try to rewrite the past so they can shape the present and keep hold of your future, but you don't have to sign up for that story. You get to write your own. And in your version, the truth doesn't bend to keep the peace, it stands to reclaim it. You may not have physical evidence, you may not get validation from mutual friends or family, you may even feel isolated, but your reality is not up for debate. And when you stop looking to them to confirm what you already know, you take your power back. Let them call you dramatic. Let them say you're too sensitive. Let them pretend nothing happened. What they say doesn't matter. What you know will save you. So the next time they twist your words, deny what you lived, or minimize your pain, pause, breathe, come back to yourself. Remember, what drained you, what left you in tears, what patterns never changed no matter how much you begged. That's your truth. Trust it. Because in a world of manipulation and false appearances, the most radical act of self-liberation is this: to stop asking for permission to believe yourself. So here's the bottom line. You don't outsmart evil by becoming it. You outsmart it by refusing to become the version of yourself it tried to create. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight to be free. You don't have to convince, beg, or chase clarity from people who thrive on your confusion. Instead, you choose something quieter, but far more powerful. You choose awareness over denial, boundaries over people-pleasing, integrity over retaliation, detachment over drama, freedom over winning, self-trust over manipulation. This path isn't loud. It's not flashy. It won't make everyone clap for you, but it will make you whole. The truth is, there's nothing more threatening to a manipulator than someone who sees clearly, stands firm, and walks away with their peace, because once you stop being reactive, once you stop being available to their chaos, they lose their power. And you gain everything. You gain your clarity. You gain your voice. You gain your self-respect. And most importantly, you gain your freedom. You don't need revenge. You don't need to prove them wrong. You don't need to make them see. You just need to live clearly, calmly, and courageously as someone who finally knows the truth and no longer needs anyone's permission to believe it. That's how you outsmart them, with peace, with clarity, with self-respect, and most of all, with a version of you they can no longer reach.